Welcome to Home Education Matters, the weekly podcast supporting you on your home education journey. Hello and welcome to another episode of Home Education Matters. And today I'm joined by Munira Adenwalla, and we are going to be talking about writing without writing, which may sound like a contradiction, but it isn't a contradiction. It is able and possible for you to help your child improve their writing, learn how to write, get better at writing, love writing, all of these things, improve their writing skills without actually writing, which my head is blown. So Munira, tell us all about your home education journey, and also how you can improve your child's writing skills without writing.
Yes, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I was one for 14 years before I had my son. And then when I had my son, I knew he was like the kids I worked with, and I was actually feeling quite stressed how we would even do school, because I saw how it was difficult for the families I worked with, and I'm like, I just don't have it in me to be fighting and advocating in a system that may not be able to support him. And I had one child, and I was like, I would really enjoy being with him and not having an exhausted, burnt out child by the end of the day. I could just see that it was going that way. He was born with his hands over his ears, so I knew he was a very sensitive child from the second he came out. So we've always home educated. And so I would say I'm new to home ed because just of my experience and journey with my work as an occupational therapist. And so we do more of a self-directed kind of approach with him, and he is very self-directed, and I would say my work as an OT and also as being a home educating mum has really changed my approach to working with children as well, because I've become so much more self-directed and seen how kids really learn and do, and how their play can get them to how much they learn from their play as well. And when you are unschooling or doing self-directed learning, it's really fun to see how kids, just how their inner drive and their motivation and going deep into their interest covers so many different subjects and areas on their own, and you get to learn with them and learn from them as well.
When you started home educating, when you had your son, you knew you were going to home educate. Did you work all the way through? Was it something that you just carried on working?
Oh, yeah. So basically, I think it was when my son was about 2 months, we basically met a potential nanny or babysitter, because I had to go back to work because I had I was sick throughout my pregnancy, and I worked privately, so I didn't have like compensation or support. So I had to go back to work quickly. And so we had this person come, and my son was not happy with her at all from the beginning, and she wasn't able to help him the way that he needed to. And right then I knew, I just jokingly said, well, how's he ever going to go to school in this situation if he's not being understood? And so that right then we kind of knew that we kind of just spoke about home education and thought that would be the avenue we would go down in his future. I mean, we had so many things going on, like with the NHS and medical stuff, so it wasn't just something out of the blue. There were things that we knew he would need a bit more help with. That so that's how we got into our home education journey. And then I worked from the beginning, from around 2 months. I had a clinic at home, and the families would come and see me at home in my clinic, and I would schedule my sessions. I would in the beginning do like maybe 2 sessions or something, and it would be around his feeds. I would literally do the session and then go breastfeed him, and that's how it worked. And I did that maybe just 2 or 3 days in the week. And then as he got older, I would do more sessions, and it would be scheduled around when his dad got home, then I would start working. And so it wasn't easy. It was hard work to do that. There was always the juggle, doing it back and forth between us. And then as he got older, when he was, I worked more, so it would be around his nap times. He would have he napped until he was like 5.5 or so. He would take a really long nap in the afternoon, and I would work during his nap times and have like I can't remember what it's called. Those babysitters, you can just get them to you click it and they come, basically. But they would be doing nothing because he would be napping, and I would work. So that was how we did that then. And then as he got older, around like 8 or 9, I could do more, even though he was home for an hour. So I would do a session in the morning, and then we'd go and do our home ed stuff, and he'd be upstairs doing his own like reading or crafting or something, you know. And then as he got even more older, he opened a YouTube channel, or he made a YouTube channel, and he basically told me that I should be making YouTube videos as well for families I work with. And he was actually right. And so I created this online program where I have videos of lessons about this no writing way, and about teaching parents about sensory processing and coordination, and a play way to get to writing. And I have so I've been doing all of that online since then. So that's where I'm at now, and we'll see where this goes in the future, I guess. But it's business has evolved as he gets older, and people sometimes think, you know, as kids are really old, that they don't need you as much. But I feel that they still need you, but it's just a little different way. So it's been interesting to see how my business has changed as my parenting needs have changed.
Tell us then about the no writing approach that you have developed.
Yeah, so so as an occupational therapist, one of the main things that people come to see us for is to help kids with handwriting. And many families would come and think that I'm going to be sitting at the table and doing handwriting practice with their child, but it's never really about the handwriting. That's just the most visible thing that people can see. And when you dive deeper, you'll see it's more about a child's their whole body awareness, their spatial awareness, their core strength, their stamina, their motor planning and coordination, and also about their fine motor skills and eye-hand coordination. And now also we're seeing a lot of children who have handwriting struggles. They've also gone through trauma at school because they've been misunderstood for so long. And again, it's not just about the handwriting. There's often other areas too, but they've been misunderstood. So many kids have said that their hands hurt from writing, and people don't believe them, or their hands are in pain and they're not believed. Or they've gotten comments on their work to work harder, or that they're being lazy and not trying hard enough. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding around the writing. So this affects kids' self-esteem and confidence, and it really leads up to this writing trauma as well. So that's what I see, a lot of children with that as well. So there's this whole sensory aspect to writing, there's the motor aspect, and then there's this emotional aspect to handwriting struggles as well. So what I do is we go deep down and get to the root cause of the difficulties, and we start there and build up in the steps it takes to get to writing. And usually that's by starting with sensory processing, and also we work on starting with connection and having and understanding kids with what why they're not doing why they're struggling with what they are. And I think that alone is a really huge thing, because then kids can trust us. They know that we've got their back, and then they're more comfortable to step out of their comfort zone and do things that are more tricky, if that makes sense as well.
So I'm guessing that what happens is a child or a parent of a child comes to you and says, my child really struggles with writing. And then you might try to work out whether this is a emotional issue, or whether this is a fine motor skills issue, or whether this is a like a muscle strength kind of
Muscle
issue.
coordination or strength, and we get to the root cause, because if you're just doing writing practice or fine motor exercises with a child, and it's usually, that's like the tip of the iceberg. It's usually, if you see a child struggling with strength and coordination in their fingers, it's really, your fingers are part of the same whole body, and there's often there's that body awareness and strength and coordination difficulties are with the whole body as well. So we need to start there first, and then develop that stability and awareness and coordination in the whole body, and that way you have a more strong, steady base, and then you can then develop the strength and coordination in your hands and fine motor skills.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here now.
Yeah.
So if a child is struggling with writing, and the issue, say for example, is hand-eye coordination. Now,
yeah,
you can surely improve your hand-eye coordination by practicing your writing. Similarly, you can improve your muscle strength in your fingers by practicing writing. So whilst it may be sizably less enjoyable than a no writing approach, I mean, would it be fair to say that you will get the same results if you just make your child sit down, pen on paper, and write for an hour a day? They might hate it, but theoretically, would it still achieve the same results, or is it much less effective?
For the kind of kids I see, there's other areas as well. And I would say that parents have come and they've said that they've done tons of handwriting practice. They've tried all the pencil grips, they've done all the workbooks. And in fact, what has happened is their child has hated writing even more, because it's like having, if I say to you and your hands are hurting to go and play tennis, and you have to keep playing tennis, you're just going to end up with a more sore hand.
And it's an idea that you hate tennis and that you're rubbish at tennis as well, right?
Yeah. And all of that is going to really impact on your mental health and your enjoyment as well. So it's not just about it being fun. I mean, that's such a huge part as well. We want it to be fun and playful, but it's not just, we're not using a no writing way just so it can be fun. It is based on brain science that you develop those underlying skills. And it's what happens in kids' development anyways. All the things that babies are doing when they're like learning to crawl and picking up little lint off the floor and stuff, that those are like the little baby steps that it takes to get to writing as well. So it's based on brain science versus just being a let's do it because it's fun. But also, play is the best way. When kids get to something, when it's naturally their idea, and because their body and brains are ready to do it, they will then take off with it even more than you telling them to like trace these letters every day.
Yeah, and that psychological or emotional component where a child starts identifying themselves with hating writing, starts identifying themselves as being bad at writing, all of that actually has a really big impact on a child, how they perform, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I have so many families that come to see me or do my program because their child will refuse to even, this is one of the standard things people say, my child will refuse to even pick up a pencil. And that tells me right there that they've gone through so much writing trauma, and it is just so painful and uncomfortable for them. And at the end of the day, you do what your body is able to do and what your body is comfortable to do. And if you can't do something, it's because you don't have some skills to do that thing. And I think kids are always trying to do their best and they always want to do well. And if they can't do something, we need to just step back and look at the underlying skills and which skills to develop to help them get their way.
I think what you've said there is so key. And it's like it totally underpins everything in home education, doesn't it, versus school?
Yeah.
That I think there's this prevailing societal myth that children are just a bit belligerent or a bit lazy or always trying to
Yeah.
skive off or something. And so there's which we would never apply to adults. We would never, if an adult was
Yeah.
really struggling with something, we wouldn't just be like, oh my God, what's the matter with you? Come on, sort yourself out. This is all, you're just putting this on, aren't you? You're just like
Yeah.
pretending. Whereas with children, we like sometimes society has this idea that if you just kind of force them to do it, they'll actually get over
Yeah.
whatever their issue is. But actually, there is something underlying that we're ignoring.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to trust that kids can get there on their own as well. And when they have the underlying skills in place, that they will be more interested in doing those things, and that their own inner drive and their own interests can get them there. Does that make sense?
It does. I have a question
Yeah.
for you that is about children with additional needs, which I'll get to in a
Yeah.
moment. I will remember. But
Yeah.
when a parent, if a parent is listening to this thinking, yeah, my child really doesn't like writing or they're really resistant to writing, but I don't know how to work out whether it's a fine motor skills thing or an emotional thing or whether it's a hand-eye coordination thing or whether it's muscle memory or whatever. Is there
Yeah.
something is there something they can be doing to diagnose this themselves, or is this really where they would need a specialist to come in?
I think it's helped that, I mean, there are so many resources out there online nowadays, but then it's kind of like a rabbit hole to look through and figure all of those things out. But for me personally, I have a checklist where it has different questions on there, and parents can just go through those questions, and if they tick the questions, then it tells them which category they need to start at to help their child at. And I pretty much always start with kids with their sensory processing and their whole body awareness and spatial awareness. Because that's, if you think about writing, it is, you have to have this visual spatial awareness and formation and planning and sequencing to know how to put those different lines and curves and diagonals together to create different letters. But all of that you have to first be able to do that with your whole body first. So even things like, people are surprised that you could be doing like climbing at the park or climbing trees and like dragging stumps around out in nature, and like all of that is also writing practice, or it's working towards writing, but it does, versus just like pencil to paper.
Okay.
But back to your question, I have this checklist, and basically there's this pyramid model of learning, and this model describes like the steps it takes to get to for kids to get up to things like reading and writing and concentrating and learning, and so the sensory processing is the first. I have a very simplified version of that model, and so sensory processing is the first step, then it's core strength, and then it's fine motor skills, then it's visual motor skills, and then comes academic learning like reading, writing, and concentrating, and more complex socializing kind of skills.
Okay, and I'm going to be asking you in a little bit some of your kind of top tips for parents who maybe don't know the specific issue, but that are generic enough to help out regardless. But
Yeah.
before I do that, I wanted to ask you about children with additional needs. So, for
Yeah.
example, children with dyslexia or dysgraphia, is it a different approach you need for those children? Does it matter if they're diagnosed with a particular label or not? Do you have to have a different approach, or realistically, is it just the same issues showing up?
Yes, for kids with dyslexia, for instance, it's they also struggle often with spatial awareness and planning and sequencing and putting things in order. So I start with a same approach with them as well, and developing this whole body awareness, grounding their body and figuring out where their body is in space and their body related to other people and other things, and it's all through play and gross motor movements. And so that's for dyslexia. And for dysgraphia, it depends what kind of dysgraphia a child has, because but many kids with dysgraphia will have this hand pain when writing as well. So if they have that kind of dysgraphia where it's more motor related, then I will also start with starting with sensory processing and building their whole body awareness, spatial awareness, strength, coordination, balance, and coordinating both sides of their body to do things. So, but then for dysgraphia, then there's also the kind where it's difficult for them to plan what to write, where it's difficult to organize what to write. And sometimes working on the body and being able to do more planning and sequencing and longer strings of play, longer strings of sequences of movement, that can also relate to story writing as well, and planning and organizing your thoughts to write.
That's interesting you said that, because my next question was going to be about typing versus writing. And I'm guessing that actually a lot of what you're saying there applies as well to typing. They have to be able to get their thoughts formulated and expressed out, irrespective of whether they're holding a pen or they're typing on a keyboard.
Yeah, you still have to do all of that for typing as well. And I'm all about having all the accommodations that a child needs in place to help them to write, because there's the physical aspect of writing, but then there's a lot of kids will have so many ideas, and what you have in your head is often so much more than what you can put down with your hands and fingers, especially for younger children. So that's why it's really important that we look at ways to help them get out what is in their head, however that is, if it's through typing or scribing or pictures or drama or acting or however it is. That's also writing in a different way versus just the physical pen to paper kind of writing. And I think it's quite normal for a child to have tons of ideas racing in their head and not be able to physically keep up with that at the same time. It's just society is getting kids to write too soon, and that's like a big damage in itself as well. And because some children will have the strength and the coordination and skills to write, and even for reading, there's so much out there on kids who read a lot later, but once they do, they can read quite well. It's just they needed to go through those underlying skills and steps in a different time span.
I know there's a lot of approaches. I can't remember if it's Steiner or Charlotte Mason or Montessori or one of them, but some of these they actually don't encourage writing until a certain age. Are you similar? Do you have an age whereby you think, really up until then we really shouldn't be doing this?
I actually don't push or force writing with children that I see. I keep stuff around, so if they are curious about it and they want to do it, then they can. And when we do play, I will like draw for them, and then there's also like crayons and markers and big chalks, or have like a big massive chalkboard, and if I do things on there related to their play, and if they want to add something or join something, there's a bucket of chalk there for them to do that with them. So there's always stuff around to invite that curiosity. And I also make sure that I'm doing these things as well. So I often will have like paper and clipboard around so that I'm doing it. And I think that's a big thing too. We as adults are not writing very much anymore either, and kids do learn so much from those mirror neurons like firing between like parent and child, or whoever their person is, and that's not really happening much anymore, because we're writing notes on our phone or laptops, and we have all these apps to do all these things for us nowadays. So I think that's a really big thing, and that's going to be my one tip when you ask me about the tips. Tips to help with writing.
For the parent to write
So I'm not saying it's a quick fix strategy, but it's one thing. If we're expecting children to write, we should be writing too.
Absolutely. I think any kind of modeling behavior, whatever it is always positive modeling, I think is always really helpful. My very last question then before we get to your top tips is, ages. So I don't mean ages by which children should or shouldn't be writing, but I mean, what
Yeah.
ages do you tend to work with? Is there an ideal age, do you think, to kind of intervene in this way and to be very play based? Do you work with adults, for example? What's your age
Oh,
cutoff?
yes, so in my program I have kids. So I have my big program where we work on these underlying skills and through lessons and activities. I have kids from 4 to 14 join this particular program, but I also have another like mini workshop for younger children who I would say, as long as they're walking and more and mobile up, so they can do that mini workshop too. It's appropriate for them. But the longer program I do is for kids from 4 to 14, and it's through working on the underlying skills versus sticking up a pencil in their hand.
That program that you mentioned, I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's not one-to-one. So I'm assuming that the
No,
things that they work through, that's generic to all children, regardless of what the issues are. They can just join in with
yeah.
this program.
And oh yeah, so this is I have an online program. So it's a 10 week program where parents go and they learn about their child's underlying skills, and they have the video demonstrations of activities to do. And then we have the it's quite the standard kind of online program. What makes it more, to give it that individual aspect, it's got the Zoom Q&As, and then there's a private Facebook group. So parents will share information about their child, and it's like getting support in real time, because you get support on how to tweak things, how to adjust things to your child, or if you need to do something a little bit differently. So it's actually quite because typically when kids get occupational therapy, they go see somebody, and the occupational therapist is working with the child. And this isn't the way I'm doing it is really to empower and support parents in being able to help their child anytime, any day, on the go, and to know that I believe parents have this deep intuition of how to help their child, and you already know so much about your child, and I take what you tell me and put it into like a nice package of information with the terminology and a sequence to it. So it's really great working. I've actually seen more progress with the children, with the parents doing the program with them, and me being there on the side to support them with it. And it is because parents know their child best. And so that you have to become their therapist or something. This is how you parent your child, and you add your own like flavor to it because you know your child best.
Exactly, and that's the whole ethos of home education, isn't it? Is that we
Yeah.
understand it. We don't become their teachers. We are there still parenting, but we're parenting them through their education. So your 10-week program, I'm assuming, doesn't have like an outcome, in as much as after 10 weeks your child will be able to write 3 paragraphs or anything like that. It's more about equipping the parents for an onward journey, is it?
Yeah. But the people do get a lot of outcomes from it. So so when I say this is a no writing way, people don't believe me. And once a parent asked me, well, do you have any like before and after examples to like prove it, kind of? And so I've now collected like before and afters from parents to show what happens, and it's through no writing practice, just through whatever they have to do on their own, or what they might end up drawing or coloring and doing. And you can see things happen, like kids who they may not have written anything before, or one child, they needed lots of hand over hands from the family, and they're doing like smiley faces and writing and crossing things out on their own. So that's that child. Or another child, it might be that their writing was really illegible, and they couldn't get their thoughts out, and they might have been writing like a few sentences by the end. Or some other kids might have been writing really big, and their writing's become smaller and neater and on the lines. It's really different. Or for some kids, it could have been they did not pick up a pencil, and now that they've gone into the restaurant and they're interested in doing those sheets that they have for children to play with until their food comes out, So it depends on the child. But my favorite things are when parents say stuff like, oh, they like scaled the top of the rock wall and they're like so much more confident now, or they're like more comfortable to like go out into the community and playing. They're not less tired and overwhelmed when doing those kind of things. And that's what happens when you work from the foundational skills, is you're looking at the whole body approach.
Yeah, and so you're getting these wider ripples from the program where they're more confident and more engaged and more connected generally. How wonderful. So okay, so I know that you obviously you sell this 10-week program, so I don't expect you to tell us all of the content of your 10-week program, but what are your top tips then for people who are listening to this who would really like to help their child's writing without actually writing? So what are your top tips for them?
Okay. So I would say one is to trust that your child is doing the best that they can. So many people will say, but they can do it, for instance. And my thing is that they can, whatever a child is doing, they're doing their very, very best. They're using all their possible effort to do that. So even if you saw them do it like once, but they didn't do it again, it's because they used all their resources to do it in that one time, and they cannot sustain using like all of their energy to do something all of the time, because that is just exhausting. So my top tip is to trust that your child is doing the best that they can, and to also to tell them that if that is helpful, and then to look at the underlying skills to develop. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, we already spoke about, is for parents to be just doing more writing as well, whether it's like write out your shopping list or put like a board on your fridge with your list of things that you want to go buy, or leaving a note for your child. You could like leave a hello on a banana or something, just just building like a culture of writing in your home. And so you writing, and then also just leaving stuff out, like leaving out whiteboards or a big chalkboard, or pots of like pens and stuff on your dining table. So just keeping things out, because you never know when someone's curiosity will come up. Like I've been on the train with my son, and all of a sudden he needs like a piece of paper to be like writing something out, or he's even been like on the top of the jungle gym at the playground, and he needs to like draw a pirate map or something, So just being ready. And I actually really like post-it notes. I think some kids are like sometimes really interested in post-it notes. So even just having those kind of things around in your home. And then, okay, so we've done trust them, you do more, and put stuff out to invite it. And then the other one is to know all the whole body play that you are doing with your child is really helping them. And it's helping them more than like writing practice alone. So any of the climbing that you're doing, any of the going to like the common and climbing trees, or dragging big branches around, or like drawing with or doing like poking sticks in the ground, or whatever it is your child is doing that is with their whole body.
I'm guessing things like taekwondo, dance, even anything that's also got kind of moves that you need to learn is helpful as well, is it?
Yeah, so for some of the kids I work with, that may be, those things might be difficult as your first thing to do, because it needs a lot of strength and stability and planning to do with your body. So we may do like some other things first until we can get there. So
that's something to build up to, maybe.
Yeah. So, but then let's say if your child is really into like ninjas or something, and maybe this is part of their deep dive interest, then that might be the right thing to do for them if they're really into it, right? But I like things like soft play, or like gymnastics kind of play where there's like crash pads and things to jump on and climb on. Swimming is really good. And going to the beach is like amazing because the beach has all that sand, and you have to do lots of like invites lots of digging and crawling around and heavy kind of walking through the sand, and that gives you a lot of body awareness. So beach days are really,
I never
really
need
good.
any persuasion to go to the beach, so yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had families where they've come in, I've been like, consider like going on a beach holiday instead of having like lots of OT all the time, a beach holiday is really, really good for body awareness and strength and coordination and inviting your play.
So we've got trusting your child, modeling and strewing things around in the Charlotte Mason way, and using whole body play and really incorporating physical movement more widely.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going into your child's interest as well, and seeing like if your child's into like cooking or baking or even using any kind of utensils, that's also helping towards fine motor skills and writing as well.
What about the emotional aspect? If you mentioned earlier on about children who may have been in a school setting and then may have trauma around writing, is there anything that you would recommend doing or not doing in those circumstances?
Yeah, I always recommend not doing writing for them, and we start with that building trust and connection and safe play with them. And I start with no writing way with them. A lot of the sensory work will also supports emotional regulation as well. So I start with what we call the proprioception, and proprioception is sensory input to your muscles and your joints, and that's grounding and calming sensory input. So when we start with that approach, we're going back to the body and just really trying to help the child feel good in themselves again.
Things like yoga, I'm guessing, meditation, mindfulness, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, if your child likes those kind of things. So I mean, some kids don't want to do those kind of things. And I think because also mindfulness has become such a big buzzword even in school, so it's almost like a demand on people as well, and it's become like schoolified almost for mindfulness. So sometimes kids aren't as interested in it, at least from the kids I've seen in school who come to see me. They just don't want to do it because it's become like taught to them now.
So for our parents who are listening and who may be thinking, okay, this sounds great, but I'm not really sure where to start. You mentioned a checklist. Is there a way that our listeners can get in touch with you, or maybe you have a social media or website or anything where they can find you if they would like to get in touch?
Yeah, so I have my Facebook group is called Helping Kids Write. And so if you just look at Helping Kids Write on Facebook, you'll find me there. And I share lots of resources and support on sensory processing and coordination and writing in there. And I think many people come and they say, oh, I thought we were coming to you for writing, but then we learned that there was actually so much more. And by looking at this so much more, it has helped the child's self-esteem and whole like mental well-being more. So just not to be surprised if you come in there and find that there is more in there. So that's what my mission is, because then we're looking at where we really need to be supporting kids from. So anyway, so that's my social media as Helping Kids Write. And then when you go through that, you'll get this checklist from there as well. And my website is ot4kids.co.uk.
ot4kids.co.uk.
And then every 3 months I run a workshop called Beyond Pencil Grasp, and I go into the science of all of this and how sensory processing relates to writing in that workshop.
Well, that's fabulous. It certainly
Yeah.
sounds a really innovative, but also a kind of pain-free way to improve writing, because I know that lots of parents really worry about their child's writing skills and worry that it's a lost skill, or worry that they won't be able to cope with exams, and that can cause a lot of, you know, hours sitting at a dining table with copywriting or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that actually just causes a lot of friction in a home educating household. So it sounds like this is a
Yeah.
really nice sort of low pressure way as well to improve a child's writing skills.
Yeah, I say it's low pressure, but it's effective because it's like based on science, science of the motor skills, but also of emotion as well, and trauma informed for kids who need that as well.
Fabulous. Well, that sounds absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, Munira, for coming on to our podcast today and inspiring our parents to take a left field approach to writing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I love that left field.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's Home Education Matters podcast. See you at the next one. Have a lovely day.